Hello everyone, and welcome to another paint review. Yay! Today I'm going to be reviewing these neon colors from Gapka paints. This video is not in any way affiliated with the company. I just happen to use their paints in almost everything I paint. So I like to spike my traditional style portraiture with some neon because it's kind of colors that represent the age that we live in. So I use them a lot, and I get asked these questions sometimes about these paints, what they're like to work with. These are handmade by a family company. They're made in Mexico by a very lovely family. Actually, one of the family members was saying that one of her brothers, who I believe founded the company, was actually a classical composer, and I thought that was so cool that he's multi-talented like that, because definitely making this quality of paints has got to be a hard thing. But they're not sponsoring me in any way. I just wanted to let you know before we get to this review. Now, obviously this review is going to be biased because obviously I use these paints all the time. And I will admit that I'm not familiar with other oil-based neon colors. They're actually not that common, which is odd. But anyway, I was going to lay out the palette, but then I thought that you might like to experience that end of it as well, because these paints are really interesting when they come out of the tube. Now, if you can kind of see how, and I don't know if this is coming out on the camera there, but there's a lot of oil in the paint here, and there's like a halo of solid paint, almost like an egg yolk of the I believe it's linseed oil here that makes up the base of this oil paint. So each pigment is going to come out of the tube a little differently. This is the neon yellow. I reviewed it before on my yellows video, so we're going to look at it today and how best to use it, in my opinion. This is the neon green, one of my very favorite colors as a child. And again, this comes out of the tube. You'll notice, I don't know if you can see that, just the runny consistency of this paint. It's tricky. You do have to keep this quite clean, I find, otherwise you're gonna have some problems. Kind of like this one. This is a good example of not keeping it clean, because I really like this neon fire orange. Use it a lot. So this one comes out of the tube in still like quite a liquidy manner, but I would say more solid than these two pigments. And my experience with oil paint has been that every pigment is different. No two pigments are the same, and that's a good thing. Now we're gonna open up the neon orange, and neon orange really doesn't translate well to film. And you're gonna find that a lot of these colors, when you get them in person, they're very bright and fiery, and on film, on camera, they look dull. At least that's what I'm seeing at the moment. Ooh. And this one, again, you can, oh man, you can almost, I think this is one of those in-person things that you can see it a lot better in person, but maybe I'll try and zoom in. But here you can see that there's a lot of oil in this paint. It's very, very oily. And then we have neon magenta. This one has a bit more body to it, but still that was a nice noise. Still very liquidy. It actually looks really dark on the camera, and this color doesn't look anything like the color that comes out of the tube, but it's a very bright pink. And definitely I would say the fluorescents don't translate well into film. I don't know if shaking it up would make a difference. This is neon pink, and it's a very hot version of this almost magenta-like color here. So we're gonna squeeze that out, and look at all the body. Like that, to me, is like just almost a perfect consistency. So this one has a nice body to it. It's very thick. She's got a lot going on. Okay. So now this is my first time using this, but this is Gapka's titanium white, and it came with the paints because they do have a line of earth tones. Now what I'm noticing is this first squirt, again, we get that halo of oil, but as you get going, it's not so bad. And I think that while some of these pigments just are a little bit more oily than others, you'd likely find that the more that you use them, the less oily they are and the more bodied they are, because that's often the way it is with paints. So I'm just going to mix up this squirt of white, and we're going to take this neon yellow for a ride one more time. And you can really see, let's see if we can get this just a tad bit closer. Sorry about my shaky cam. Well, let's get you right down to the action so you can see. This has really got a lot of viscosity, I believe is the technical term, to it. Yeah, it can be a really thin paint when it wants to be. And then let's go over here to this green. I'm trying not to get a shadow on this, but you can see that this paint can be quite thin. But again, it might not be so much if I used it more, which I'll admit I haven't used it a ton. You can see this nice kind of limey green. Let's get a little bit more into there. Pretty nice color. Alright, I'm going to wipe this off so you don't contaminate any of the other colors. See my sampling already there. And then this is the neon fire. I'm just going to kind of draw it down here. Now this one has a good body to it, and again, it might be that maybe I've just used this tube more. And so now we're out of the greasy separated pigment thing. But you can see this has a really great color to it. I love orange. I'm a sucker for orange, so slightly partial there. So much bias when it comes to color. So much bias. Color is one of those things you're not going to get a consensus on. Now this one, I just want to take you kind of as close as we can go, and you can see that there is a lot of oil here, and here, but don't be afraid, because I think that the more you are to use the paint, the less you're going to see that sort of oiliness. And if you want to try these colors, what I did first was I bought this starter pack, and you can see some of them are dried out. I used them for quite a while before I went and bought a set, because it goes pretty far. I don't use a ton of paint when I paint though, so that might just be a me thing too. Now we're going to mix up the neon orange now, and you can see this makes a really almost sunshiny, but with that bright fluorescent, what is that color? Almost like a sign, like a warning sign maybe. And this one, and I will admit, I don't think I've used very much of this neon magenta, so I think that's probably why she's so oily. But let's see. Ooh. Oh, does that remind you of like raspberry screamers? That's what it reminds me of. Very cool. I like that. That's very cool. Maybe I'll use it more. I don't know. Now this is one of my favorites because when you spread it out, you can see almost like different shades. It has kind of a purplish hue when you spread it out like this on the edges. I find that kind of satisfying. So let's see what this looks like mixed in. Now you can tell that this is quite a bit brighter. There's more pigment load in this than there is in this. And that's why some of these colors, I haven't done a light, medium, dark mixture here with these because there is an element to it where some of them are a little bit hard to control. Like some of these colors, and again, it might just be my use of it or my not using it very much, but some of these colors, because they're really, really thin, I find that sometimes that aspect can be hard to control, and they also seem to pop out really well against white. So again, there's so much glare. Yeah, so anyway, they're fun. They make beautiful pastels, and often I actually use them that way in some of my backgrounds to give the sky almost an unnatural look. Okay, so now the second part of the video is me showing you how I typically use these paints. However, in this little grisaille painting that I have here on this board, I've never used this kind of grisaille with these before, so this is going to be a whole new experience for me, and I hope that you enjoy it as much as I am nervous about this experiment. I don't know if I'm going to like it or if I'm just going to rub it all off, but I guess we'll find out. Now what I'm thinking for this is I want to take some yellow and I want to take maybe some orange. We're just gonna try it, and if it doesn't work, I'm gonna wipe it off. But I'm really interested to see how these colors will look over top of this, I believe it was Prussian blue, or I forget, Payne's gray maybe, that I used for most of this study. So we're gonna take this lovely neon orange and we're just gonna brush it over top of this little painting, and you can see already what I mean about them being just fantastic for glazing. And really this is primarily my use of them because I find then you get more of a pop out of these sorts of, when there's a background there, it tends to really pop. So I don't know, I'm really liking this. I think this looks really interesting. I'm digging it. I'm digging it. This is good. All right. So it might almost need to be oiled out a little bit more, but I'm just gonna create a really subtle fade almost And then I'm gonna fade in a bit of this. What is this? Neon orange. And we're gonna go from here and work our way up. There we go. Yeah, see, the orange works differently on this one. It's very faint. Let's see if I get more pigment in there, if I can make it pop a little bit more. Oh, interesting. Okay. So this is why experiments I find so fascinating. I'm just gonna clean my sides a bit, because I actually don't want to paint the sides. I've already painted them gold, and I like it like that. I'm just gonna wipe it off. Oil paint's great because you can just wipe it off. Say goodbye to that. I'm gonna buff this out a little bit because, see, this glaze is gonna be a little bit fainter than its predecessor, and that's okay for this application because this is just an experiment. I actually have never done entire grisaille painting. Normally just an element will be grisaille, and then I'll spike that with orange, and so this has been illuminating for me. Now, I think I'm going to try some of this neon pink, and I'm gonna incorporate a little bit of magenta just because why not? And we're gonna see how it looks on the bottom here. Very interesting, and I can definitely feel like there's more pigment on this brush. There's more drag. It's a drier tube of paint, which, you know, when you're talking about handmade batches, each batch is going to be a little bit different. That's one thing that's kind of, I don't know, like magical about handmade paints is they're all a little different, and I know that can also seem kind of scary for some people, but I think for the most part you wouldn't even be able to tell the difference from one batch to another, not in any great manner, unless you sat each pigment down and had a chat with them. But yeah, anyway, so I think that's kind of cool. I have 3 more of these that I was going to experiment with, but I haven't finished painting them. This one, she's in the drawing phase, and I wanted to try these other colors on them. So here I did the neon and the, was it? Neon pink. And you can kind of see there's a fun little gradation there. I think it looks cool. I'm liking it. I'm into it. I don't know, what do you think? Do you think this looks cool? And should I do more? Which I plan on doing, as long as I can get all my other commitments met. Why not, right? So anyway, that's been my little review on the Gapka neons. I think they're great for glazing, especially. They work really, really well. And I'd be excited to try other neon paints in the oil paint realm. If you know of any, just let me know in the comments below. And you know, I give it a like, give it a thumbs up, give it a subscribe. I'd love to see you here again. Bye. So here we are in the morning, and I just wanted to show you these paints after they've sat out for an evening. I often leave my palettes out to sit, and you can see the paint is still fresh, still malleable, and it doesn't look like it's going to dry out anytime soon. And what I've noticed with these is, of all my paints, I can leave them on a palette like this, just out in the open air, for probably a week or more. In some cases, I've come back like with some of the pigments, like the orange, I've come back weeks later and it's still wet. It's still usable. I've been able to reuse paint scraps like this like weeks after the fact. So that's one nice thing about these paints, is they don't go to waste. A little tip for you: you can freeze oil paint, and I do this quite regularly, and it lasts probably 2 to 3 months, I believe, before hardening. So that's one way to save some money. Oil paint is expensive, and you can reuse all these paint scraps for quite a while. And here you can see my little experiment. I'm still happy with it. You can see the paint has kind of settled in the darker areas and doesn't stand out as much anymore in those areas. But so that being said about these paints staying wet on the palette, you do have to give them a bit more time to dry. They're not fast drying paints, so allot yourself some time for them to dry, or you can use alkyds to quicken the drying time. But what I do when I'm painting with them is I use very thin layers, much like this piece, and that's why I'm able to not wait forever to let them dry. Like, if you use really thin layers, you don't need as much time. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you liked seeing these paints. I guess the last thing to do is to show you them under the blacklight. So I've darkened the studio now. It's still daytime, so this will be a little fainter than if it was darker. But this is what the paints look like under my blacklight, and I just have the blacklight in my lamp here, and the closer you can hold it, the more you can see the beautiful fluorescence. You can see some of them. You can see the stronger the pigment, the less diluted, the more it glows, and that's why I love to use them as a glaze, because then it doesn't take any of that lovely glowing property away. And you can see the fluorescence picked up even on the labels, so that's super fun. You can see some pigments are more reactive than others. These pigments that aren't showing at all are likely due to the titanium white kind of blocking out some of their pigment. Even just on my rag, makes my rag look like art. And here is the glaze and how it shows up on this one. And now I'm going to do a little montage of some of my other paintings that I've used these on.